off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Aquilini.
No, he's a good human being, is what he would say about himself, I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin, would you? Jesus.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm gonna have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center, and probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast, live from Richmond Mall. I am actually in a mall just finishing play-by-play between the North Island Silvertips and Greater Vancouver Canadians in U18 action. Overtime goal, Dylan Nazareth. The Canadians are on a 3-game winning streak. The GVC are on a 3-game winning streak. The Montreal Canadiens, we'll talk about later. But you can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey, Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast, where we stand strong at 100 and the Andre Markov of subscribers. Please give us a like, a subscribe, a share, a follow. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, etc., etc. And, of course, you can subscribe to the audio that will be up shortly after this. There were 2 of us last week that carried the drive down the road, the highway. Sean and Tyler did a magnificent job keeping it on the road, not in the ditch, not turning left. It did not go on the golden. You did so. Chris and I applaud an excellent job. How did it feel driving the bus?
Oh, it was weird. trying to figure out how to do the intro and saying that yes, I am not Kevin Olenek. Yep, it's. I'm glad you're back, Kev. I'm glad that you're back to keep us on the rails, out of the ditch, and keeping us going forwards.
Absolutely. Yeah. Once we kind of got into it, it was okay. But yeah, off the beginning, it was strange.
Chris, you were also missed. They didn't tell you that, but I will tell you that. Belated happy birthday.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Kev.
The most underrated person on the podcast.
Yes.
Ah, shucks.
Does that make Devin the most overrated?
Yes.
Fired.
Yeah.
He's not even here to back himself up when I'm taking shots.
Devin would give us all shots in some way, shape, or form anyway. So Devin is not here to defend himself.
But feels like 6 months since Devin and I have been on the same show here. So
yes.
Boy.
I know that.
Hopefully we'll see him again soon.
Yes. So just maybe we'll start with the news here. Because I continue to do play-by-play Sunday afternoons, Sunday mornings, it's going to be tough to keep our 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock time on Sundays. So we are going to be moving our podcast starting next week to Mondays to alleviate this confusion, because it's tough on everybody if I have a game and we have to keep switching around. So we're going to move to Monday night. So we have that first announcement. We'll be doing the same live, just one day after. We'll probably have other news to catch up on as well during the Monday. So good news, bad news there, I guess. But hey, this is the life of the hockey world.
Do you want some really good news going forward about the podcast?
Let's also have some good news. It's all good news.
But all right, so I alluded to this last week and I think the week before, but we are officially partnered up with the Pig and Duke pubs in Calgary, and you go. They've got their Pig and Puck Club that they run every year, and you go there, you sign up, you order the specials, and they'll you get entered into a chance to win a ticket, an experience. You get a ticket to a Flames versus Canucks game in April. You get food and drinks at the pub, a limo to and from the game, and it's a whole lot of fun. It's actually how I became good. Started my relationship with our favorite pub owner, Stephen Loudon, because I won it about 3-4 years ago. But now we are partnered with them. So not only do you have the chances to win by entering at the pub, you also have 2 chances to win with us. So we've worked it out so that Devin, Chris, and myself are all going to that game as well as hosts, along with Steven and some others. And we will be and we're going to be allowing you guys to our viewers, our listeners, to get chances to win one of 2 tickets to that game. So we've got 2 ways for you to enter to win those tickets. You can retweet our podcast episodes every week. That'll get you 1 entry. As well as starting next week, we will have a word of the week that we will mention at some point during the podcast. And you can DM us at hockey_podcast on Twitter, the word of the week, and that will get you 3 entries. And then we'll announce our winners in the new year, and we will be looking forward to going to a hockey game, going to a Flames versus Canucks game with our viewers.
That's awesome. That's very exciting. We thank for the Pig and Duke for doing that. We're working on a couple of other things as well, because, maybe Tyler and I make a trip out there. Who knows? Maybe COVID will be lower down on the. I mean, hopefully things seem to be going on the right direction so far, but we got to knock on wood here, because last time we thought that it didn't necessarily, but just on a side note, I think that's great. Thank you to the Pig and Duke. And just on the whole, maybe this will transition into, it's great that regular season hockey is back, and it's great to see fans in the stands. Last year, I'm not going to look back fondly on last year. I think it just was too. I thank the NHL for making the effort, but it just really, with the fans in the stands, you even saw that with the Oilers Flames games last night. There was the energy is just so much different, and not only that, from the Canucks' perspective, actually playing another team that is not from Canada, just fresh eyes is great as well. And I'm so glad it's back. Kudos to everybody for making this as safe as possible. I think that this is great. And I'll go on mute now.
Yeah, just on that note, Kevin, last night I was out in Prince Rupert refereeing one of the season opening games for the Central Interior Hockey League Senior Men's AA up here in Northern BC. They took last year off. And yeah, it was a trip. I mean, it was only 50% capacity. I think it was just a little over 500 fans there in Prince Rupert. But just to be in a rink, part of a hockey game with fans, to be out there again was awesome. And it was 7-4 for the Kitimat Ice Demons over the local Rupert Rampage. But still, everybody put on a good show there. It was a fairly cleanly played game, which was nice for us as the refs to ease into it a bit. But to see the excitement and the hunger from the local fans there to get out and see a hockey game again, even at a lower level like that was awesome as well. It's been a long road to get to this point, and here we are, and hopefully it stays this way.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm going to the game, the Flames home opener tomorrow, and I cannot wait. I'll be honest, I'll probably tear up. It's been too long. Hockey's such a big part of my life, and and the fans are a big part of hockey. Not being able to have fans in, or even close to a full capacity for the longest time has been, at least up here in Canada, has been just devastating. And I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yep. Yeah, when I was at the preseason game, it was definitely an experience to be back in a building with fans again. And yeah, definitely need a lot more of that. And that was only for a preseason game that was half full. So I can only imagine what a regular season game would be like. So enjoy that, Sean.
And maybe Tyler can speak to this too, but just, even calling games with fans in the stands. And you could even hear it. We'll start with the Flames here, but you could really hear it in Harner Ryan singing Louis DeBrusk's call last night. I know that some people are very upset with Louis DeBrusk because of one of his takes, but we'll get to that in a second. But you could just hear a different energy from calling the game from last year. You just feel it. It's just different. Add the element of the game. It's so important. So,
yeah, I think we've learned with sports without fans is that you don't know what you're really missing till it's gone. And it was a strange season last season. The fake crowd noise. We were just happy to see some puck on the TV, but as it was mentioned earlier, I mean, being able to play all the teams again and go to U.S. buildings and this is what a breath of fresh air. Really, now the hope is that, and especially here off the bat, there's been a number of players and also broadcasters. John Garrett, we wish you well. There's been all of that going on to start the season here with people in the COVID protocol. So it kind of makes you a little bit nervous that maybe this could go off the rails, but we will knock on wood that it doesn't.
Yeah. Oh, go.
Okay. I was just going to say, yeah, especially with McKinnon, because he's on 2 of my fantasy teams, and this is now the second time he's out with COVID this season. So, yeah, thanks, Nathan.
Shout out, by the way, can I just shout out the auto draft? The auto draft has led me to my first victory in fantasy. Or I don't know who I'm playing, but I feel bad for him or her. As I think I'm going to win that one. But anyway, if you have comments, questions, we'll get into the Connor Garland friendship tour coming up here in a little bit. The Leafs are in salary cap situation as well. By the way, also, one of the other guys, just speaking of COVID, I feel really bad for was Kraken play-by-play announcer Everin Fitzhugh missed the first game because of COVID. Unfortunately, John Forsland had to take that call. I just felt so bad for him, but he's going to be back. And we'll touch on the Kraken a little bit, but we'll start with the Battle of Alberta last night. We kind of got into it with Harner Ryan singing Louis DeBrusk. But the Calgary Flames lost the Edmonton Oilers 5-2. Connor McDavid doing Connor McDavid type of things on the power play. Couple goals, and good and bad from the Flames last night. I mean, I think the good is we saw a team with a bit more resiliency than we've seen in recent years. The 2-0, 3-0 lead. They did wilt. They tried to fight back. They got it to 3-2, but Jesse Piardi scores 26 seconds later. And I know it's a breakaway, and I know that people are not loving Zadorov, but I think Markstrom partly would have liked to have that one back. I think that's a save he would have liked to have made. But ultimately, I think with the Flames, I think the early season questions are already, to me, the amount of skill just is concerning. Foot speed on the back end, definitely concerning. And 47 shots. I'll grant you they got a lot of shots on goal, but there was not a lot of grade A scoring chances there. So, good and bad. I think the Flames are making some efforts. They didn't have Blake Coleman. They didn't have Tyler Pitlick, but overall, it was a typical 14th straight loss on opening night for the Calgary Flames.
That's quite the streak. It's early though. They've only played one game. Canucks have played 3. Oilers now have 2. It's still early. There's been a lot of change in that locker room and in that roster. We'll see what happens. I think there's a couple things to be excited about on the Flames, but the question marks that we've outlined multiple times are there, and they're glaring.
A little bit unfortunate for the Flames, I would say, to have to wait so long to start their season. Almost like a full week between the last preseason game their opener, and the opener's on the road, and it's Hockey Night in Canada in Edmonton, and that's a little bit of a tough break on the schedule. But Kevin mentioned Connor McDavid. I mean, he's firing laser shots while he's fading away from the net. That's gotta concern everybody. It's not like those two, the one timer, his second goal. He didn't even step into that thing. He was kind of almost fading backwards. And then the first goal, he was really pushing back and just kind of pushed the puck ahead. Great timing with the forehand shot there. And and then the empty netter. That was not the easiest of empty netters either to finish off that chance. So, you gotta be excited there if you're an Oilers fan. And the length of the lineup now with Zach Hyman in it and Jesse Puljujärvi doing as well as he is, it's going to make for some interesting battles of Alberta throughout this season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Edmonton can kind of hold on to this dominance that they've seemed to have grasped in the past season or two as far as their offense is concerned. We'll see if the defense that they switched up over the offseason will be enough to keep them in vying for that top spot in the Pacific for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I guess, just from the Oilers' perspective, McDavid is going to do his stuff. The fact that McDavid has found something to improve upon, that frightens just all of us. But good for the Canadian Olympic team. So in Canada, yay, Connor. I think their depth is good, forward-wise. I'm still concerned about that defense overall. I think a lot of teams are going to be using a lot of stretch passes. I still feel that defense, we talk about the Flames defense being slow. I don't see a lot of foot speed from the Oilers D overall. But I think Duncan Keith, I thought Duncan Keith was okay for the most part against Calgary. I think that we'll get to what Tyler Myers did and his Ring of Honor nomination that we now have for him. But, that's the one concern is foot speed on the back end for the Oilers, I think will be something I'm very concerned about. But they have a pretty good top six. Jesse Puljujärvi, I think, has come a long way. And I think that Zach Hyman, forget his contract, he's going to help the Oilers. He really is. He's really one of those guys. Forget the comparisons. This guy is. I think the Leafs are really going to miss him, and I think the Oilers are really going to be valuable for him. I know a lot of people were upset that DeBrusk compared him to Jarome Iginla. I don't think he was saying he's as good as Jarome Iginla. I think his style is very comparable to Jarome Iginla in terms of how he skates and shoots. I don't think he's the same, but he's going to help. He's definitely, I think, a good acquisition for the Oilers. Hate to give it. We don't want to always give him credit here, but it was a good acquisition to get that type of player.
The acquisition of the player is fine. It was just the contract that is questionable for in the later years of that deal. He's for the next 2-3 years he's going to be good.
Yeah, and then for the Oilers, it is about the next 2 or 3 years. It's not about down the road. It's about right now. They've got to make some noise in the playoffs here, and it's only 2 games, but so far so good with Zach Hyman. Fans are going to be excited about having him.
For sure.
You guys, as we transition, by the way, into the Canucks, as we spent, maybe a couple of other things that, let's talk about Rasmus Andersson. Sean and I had a debate about if he was going to get suspended. I thought he was, but I think for the headbutt on Kyler Yamamoto, I thought he was. I think the left hand that Elliot Friedman showed last night, I think Prevent made that a fine of $5,000. And so I think that the Flames are very fortunate there in terms of that, because, my God, Eric Gudbranson would have to have moved into the top 4.
I'm with you, Kevin. I thought there'd be something on that for sure. Whether there's a left hand or not, there's still some leading with the head there, and so I figured maybe a game just to message send, especially since they've been pretty hard on the suspensions here to start the season just across the league. But it wasn't that aggressive. I mean, really, the action's there, but the aggressiveness wasn't there. So it doesn't surprise me either that they went with the fine. At least there's a bit of a public shaming component to it. And Yamamoto was, he continued to play. It wasn't that big a deal in the moment. But we don't want to see headbutts. That's not something you come across very often.
No, it's one of those like very borderline plays. And I think, and I'm getting just very frustrated with every time there's something that is more than a 2-minute minor, people are screaming for a suspension. And that's not how that should work. Like, we should be giving the onus should be on the on ice officials to make the call correctly then. And then they shouldn't just be say, oh, well, don't worry about it. The supplementary discipline will get it. And it's a borderline one. I thought it was a fine at most, and you got a fine.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Sean in this particular conversation. I didn't really think it was too egregious, but yeah, like Tyler said, the aggressiveness kind of was not there to really warrant anything actual suspension wise.
Yeah. However, Daryl Sutter did compliment Rasmus Anderson, said he was their best defenseman, and I would agree. I thought he was. I know that Mchugh Tkachuk got 9 shots on goal. I think that there were some impressed. I just didn't feel, maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but it just didn't feel quite like the Mchugh Tkachuk of that the Flames need of Mchugh Tkachuk. I mean, he was there, but I just think that there could have been more. And I thought a lot of the top 6, I mean, Dubé and Mangiapane were quite strong all game, but didn't think Lindholm was always there. Didn't think Monahan. I think Monahan's still trying to get his game legs. Johnny Gaudreau tried some things in the third period, but I think they need more from their top 6 overall. That's where I came out. I thought the best of all of them was Mangiapane by far, and I know Tkachuk 9 shots. I thought there could have been more there. Maybe I'm missing something or being too harsh.
Well, your biggest players have to be your biggest players. So yeah, to want more from the top 6, I think is definitely warranted. And Calgary has kind of always been at least the past couple of seasons have been a little more on the frustrating sense of like, where's the offense that the team on paper should provide.
The thing with Tkachuk is he needs to be engaged physically. He needs to be engaged emotionally for these to bring out the best in him. He only had 2 hits last night. Like, that's not enough for Mchugh Tkachuk, in my opinion. I think he needs to be, and I think Daryl knows that, and he needs him to be more physically engaged. Sean Monahan had 4 hits. Like, he has to get in on that forecheck, create havoc, and be physical. And the more he does that, the better he'll play.
The other thing in terms of, the other thing in terms of forwards is Blake Coleman Sean will get to see, and Devin get to see Blake Coleman firsthand. The Calgary Flames make his debut. I'm intrigued how they set up that lineup. They had Lindholm, Tkachuk, and Gaudreau. They were playing Lindholm, Tkachuk, and Coleman in the preseason. I wonder if they go that way. I'm intrigued how they create their line. I imagine that they're going to go 12 forward, 6 defensemen. They basically went 11-7, but one defenseman got 3 minutes and 27 seconds of ice time, which frustrates me. I'll address that in a second. But to me, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this lineup gets up, and do we see a Monahan-Gaudreau reunion out of all this?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I liked the Monahan, Mangiapane, Dubé line. I thought they played well, and I think Coleman slides in on the third line. Honestly, I think you play him with Backlund and whoever else you can throw on that line. If it's Lucic, it's Lucic. If it's Richie, it's Richie. If it's Trevor Lewis, it's Trevor Lewis. And you just see what happens, because I think that top 6 I think you have to give that top six a little bit more time to gel and see what you got. And you can throw Coleman in there to be more of a pest, and maybe you throw him on with Tkachuk so he can maybe drag Tkachuk into the emotion of the game, which usually is something that Tkachuk does.
As far as defensively, I don't know. I call play by play. I didn't hear anything if there was anything mentioned about Oliver Shillington, and I don't understand why he played 3 minutes and 27 seconds. Like, I don't understand why you go 11-7, and he didn't play at all in the second. He didn't play at all in the third. And I'm not trying to be this rah-rah fan, but the guy had a really strong preseason. I would argue he had a stronger preseason than Valimaki. To me, foot speed was absolutely an issue. I mean, the Flames were, when Tanev and Zadorov were on the ice, it was McDavid, Draisaitl, and PRV. Like, that just at clockwork. It's just, to me, I was very confused. Maybe I'm the only one that was confused, but I don't understand the Shillington use last night.
Well, I think part of it was they didn't have, like, with cap issues and everything, they didn't have a forward to dress, because I don't think they had a spare forward at that point, and they were trying to bring up Glenn Godden. So they just went with 11-7, and Shillington. It needs to earn the trust of Daryl Sutter, because I don't think he has it, and he's not your typical Daryl Sutter player, so he has to earn it.
There's a witty rapport of fast, speedy, and skilled there. But anyway, I will not touch that. But overall, well, I guess we'll see more about the Flames. I don't know if there's anything else to touch on. Again, Markstrom, I thought he was okay. I think he could have been better. I think a couple of goals he would have liked to have back, but it's one game. I'm not tearing the wall down or anything like that if I'm the Flames. I think you move on, see what happens against Anaheim. You get your home opener. You're starting to get into the rhythm. The guy that can't get on because he's trapped made a comment. Godden played well last night, but again, he only played 5 minutes and 42 seconds. Yeah, it's just the line deployment was weird to me, but we'll see what happens in the next game.
Yeah, it was just, like I said, I think part of it is just the injuries, with Pitlick being hurt and not being able to play, Coleman suspended, not being able to play. They didn't have that extra forward. But yeah, if you go over to, we can go over to the Canucks and you talk about fourth line not playing. It's early in the season. One like, I think it's one thing to be concerned or make a note. I would say concerned. Make note of who isn't getting the ice time in game 1 through game 5. But I think it's something that you have to wait to see if that's an actual pattern.
Fair. I'm with you on that, but that was just intriguing to me. I feel like we've talked enough about Flames. Looking at Tyler and Chris's eyes, it's time to move on. So we'll get to the friendship tour. The Vancouver Canucks 1-1 to start the year. They had the comeback against the Oilers. They ended up in a shootout loss. They had the blown lead against the Philadelphia Flyers, ended up in a win. And then they had the controversial no goal that prevented their loss to the Detroit Red Wings. Where are we at? How are we feeling after 3 games?
I'm feeling good. I have no idea what's going on. I'm feeling good. I like the way they're playing. They're an exciting team to watch. There are some kinks to work out for sure, but I like what this team is doing right now. They've got the firepower to come back against the Oilers. They blew the lead against the Flyers, but they found a way to win. And yeah, if the call on the ice was a goal last night, that's a tie game. But the call on the ice was no goal, and there was no sort of way to there wasn't enough to overturn it either, depending on what the call on the ice was. So it is, but the process is good so far, I think, and it's early, but I like the what they've got going, and I think there's still some players who haven't quite hit their stride, and haven't quite gotten the as we're talking about time on ice. Podkolzin hasn't quite got the full. He's not quite in Green's good books just yet. Doesn't have the trust there, but he's getting there. He's doing all the little things. He will get there.
And certainly scoring his first goal in the game against Philly will help his cause there. For me, the Canucks, I mean, it's been okay. I think that's how I would describe it. I mean, it's 2 losses in the first 3 games. Yeah, it's 3 points out of a possible 6, so it's essentially 500. So it's not bad, but it's Detroit, right? When you see Detroit on the schedule, you're kind of expecting a win there. So that's unfortunate, but like I say, it's been okay. There's still been a lot of change, there's a lot of gelling to be done still with the Canucks. So not time to be panicked by any stretch at all. It's but I definitely feel like there's something wanting there. The Oilers are always a bit of a tough one now for the Canucks in terms of a matchup in Philadelphia. Rockin' building there. I mean, a bit of a trip watching the Canucks play a game in a full U.S. rink, and Corey Hirsch on the broadcast kind of hinted at it too. Like if the Flyers get the next goal, look out. And then they did force overtime and kind of got screwed on a slashing call to Oliver Ekman-Larsson there when it was actually the puck that hit the player's face. But they overcame it in the end. They ended up getting a shootout win there. So I would have been concerned more probably if, against the Oilers, they kind of just rolled over and quit. But the fact that they were able to force overtime in that one showed some resilience there. And like Sean said, the process looks good. And even if you're not getting the results, you at least hope for some good process out the gate here.
Yeah, I would say they're kind of right in the sweet spot as far as what my expectation was to start the season. Like I wasn't expecting them to come bursting out of the gate, but I was also hoping that they didn't just completely lay an egg at the same time. And yeah, that's kind of what they have done. They've been kind of average at best, if you will. As far as the game last night, it was a little disappointing in the sense of like Tyler said, that you'd hope to get a win from Detroit. But to Grice's credit, he stood on his head last night and had quite a few Luongo-esque spectacular saves. So credit where it's due.
Yeah, I guess in terms of players, we'll start with already he's making friends. It's wonderful. Connor Garland is, Philip Zadina called him a midget. I think he got a comment on something similar in Philadelphia as well. Look, for those who hate the Canucks, when they were good, when this team was at the top of their level, Kessler, Burrows, Bieksa, and a number of other of them were just pests and pests. And that's when the Canucks were absolutely at their best. And I think that Connor Garland brings that element back to the Canucks. I think there's a lot there. I said the fans would love him, and they're starting to already love him. I think he's been one of the highlights to me for the Canucks. One of the highlights so far this year.
Yeah, if I read Konecny's lips properly during that Philly game, I think he called him an elf. So an elf and a midget in 2 back-to-back games. He's definitely on a friendship tour for sure.
The Canucks have needed that. And throw in Niels Höglander as well. He is an absolute pain in the ass to play against, and he's been fantastic and one of the highlights in the first few games as well. They're going to have that type of player on 2, 3, 4 lines. throughout this year, because you throw in JT Miller, you throw in even Bo Horvat's playing with some piss and vinegar that I don't think I've seen from him before. I think we're going to see this team play with an edge and this year that they haven't played with before. And I think that's going to really help them take that next step. So if Connor Garland is part of that, the players leading the charge there, that is fantastic.
And maybe that's kind of the team answer as far as like the overall like team toughness that people are asking about, since we kind of have a lack of a guy that's known to punch people in faces.
Yeah, and should be noted here, Zach Mchugh claimed off waivers by Philly there a few days ago. So, and that was one of the guys that did like to fight and was pretty good at it. So Canucks are missing that now. It's got to be collective for sure, and it certainly helps when you have Horvat more willing to get involved in that kind of thing.
The other guy that really impressed me, and we'll get to the defense in a second. I think that Pettersson, I've really been liking his 200-foot game. He's had a couple of really good opportunities offensively, but he's also been in the defensive zone. I think he's been playing really well. I was a little concerned, I have to admit. I know that Quinn's dad was taking care of him, but still, you don't get off to your training camp start. You still get your feet under you. And he, to his credit, has stepped up. And I think, to me, I've really been impressed so far with his 200-foot game. I don't know if you guys see it the same way.
Well, I think he's always had a good 200-foot game. It's just nice to keep seeing that, and especially if you're behind in the game or you don't have very many wins or whatever. The temptation there would be to kind of abandon the defense, start pressing a little more offensively. But Elias is pretty committed to that 200-foot game no matter what. So it's encouraging, and you need that.
Yeah, I agree. I've always been impressed with how much he cares about all three zones on the ice. There's players who are just fully offensive, and there's players who almost are very safe and stay at home, and then there's players who can put together the whole package, and PD has the drive and the ability to do that. And I think we're going to see. I really hope we see him take that next step and become someone that you can maybe in 2-3 years time talk about in maybe even at least a top 5, top 6 Selke vote type player, because that's the type of player you need to win in this league.
Mm-hmm.
If you can even become a shadow of what Patrice Bergeron has been throughout his career, that would definitely be a goal as far as, providing the offense, but also being that defensive-minded, solid overall 200-foot game.
I think it's just the maturity of not worrying necessarily about getting all the points, but understanding the full complexity of the game. I mean, you're right. He's always had it. I'm just impressed because I think it's improved. I think that, we talk about Connor McDavid improving on that shot. I think Pettersson in his 200-foot game is absolutely improved. I have a particular concern, but I am curious where your concerns are.
My concern is just details. They got to figure out how to be better on details and be able to just let their offensive ability shine, and not get stuck, not let the defensive liabilities weigh them down.
Yeah, if there's a particular part of our game that I guess has a little bit of concern starting the season, I would probably say penalty killing. We definitely lost a lot of our solid, well-known penalty killers over the offseason. So to find, I guess, a new stable set of PK lines when we're, trying to kill off a power play, definitely could use some improvement. But we'll see if we can improve on that, over the next coming games.
On the other side of special teams, they had a couple of power play goals and a win against Philadelphia on Friday. But I don't know if it's just me, fellas, but It is hard watching that power play sometimes with the way they try to force it through sometimes. PD, I don't know if he's lacking some confidence in the one-timer, or he's just not getting the pass into his wheelhouse there or what, but there's too many occasions where he's stopping the puck and then really doesn't have a great opportunity to shoot it. So it's not a horrible power play by any stretch, but it needs some work. It's still not the smoothest looking power play here, and there was a lot of that last year, which became frustrating for me. So that's one area of not, a little bit of concern anyways, to see if they can try and smooth that out. However, the second unit seems to be generating chances anytime they get an opportunity out there, so that is a plus. At least you got two units you feel like there's some possibility of scoring with. Beyond that, at least it's an 82-game season, so if they get off to a bit of a slow start, there's more runway to make up the ground. But we've talked about it here before. With all the changes and the new personnel, you don't want to be burning too many games here in October and putting yourself behind again. So
starting six on the road with a back-to-back, it's tough.
Yeah,
I was hoping that I'm just hoping for 500 out of this and then build off of that. So. If they can find a way to do better than that, that's a bonus for me.
Yeah, if you're, I don't even think 2-4 is in this division is necessarily disastrous. I think you come away 1-5. I think that's concerning, but 2-4, wouldn't be super worried. Anything 3-3 would be ideal. Anything better is great. Considering all that you have going on. I think that Travis is still trying to figure out his defensive pairs. OEL has been pretty impressive. Quinn Hughes has been pretty good, but I still think he's trying to find the chemistry there of who's playing with him.
Mm-hmm. Just on OEL, same as, Garland, who we've talked about, but I think to this point, fans should be reasonably satisfied with how well the new acquisitions are playing. I know there's a lot of focus on OEL because of his contract, but so far so good with him. But it's early, and defense is a thankless job, and there can be some tough stretches in a season where it seems like it's weeks long, even though it's only been a couple of games of bad play or whatever. So we'll see how it turns out with him. But so far so good. I think everybody should breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief that he's fitting in here just fine.
Yeah, I completely echo Tyler's sentiments, especially in terms of OEL, for sure.
OEL, Hughes, Rathbone, they've all looked really solid, if not better than that to start. It's the trying to find that right combination with those three sort of leading the charge, at least offensively, for the Canucks off the blue line.
Yeah, I suspect we'll see Brad Hunt at some point during this road trip. I think that could be coming. I'm just, all of these, some of these, Tyler, you mentioned, the consternation about this trade. Based on what I've seen on Twitter, no one had any consternation on this trade anymore. It was a brilliant trade from the beginning. What are you talking about? We hated this trade. Twitter just all of a sudden changed their mind.
Well, the trade was made so long ago now. You can't go back and undo it. Here we are. It's time to actually evaluate. And, again, it's only been 3 games. It could go off the rails here, but it could also stay like this and continue to be solid.
That on the internet, revisionist history is definitely a thing.
Speaking of Trey, what does everyone think of Juho Lamikko so far? I think he's been a good fourth line player who can penalty kill.
I haven't, seen him too much on in the games that I have been watching, but I guess especially in that sort of depth role, if you're not being overly talked about, that could be generally a good thing, that you're not doing anything overly glaring or bad. So. Yeah, I guess I'd give that a pass.
I'd use that word too. I give it a pass. It's nothing overly impressive, but Juho was a guy that lost his spot on this team, was in the coach's doghouse. So to make a deal there and bring in a guy that is actually playing and providing some help and some stability on the fourth line is that's a plus, even though it's a bit of a reach to call that a big plus. It's better than bringing in a couple of guys that are nobodies for system depth, and you may never see them at the NHL level.
I think he's been solid. I think, certainly a pass. I think he's doing what is expected of him so far. I think it's been a good start. And, one of the issues with the Canucks in the last few years has been that depth. So, I mean, I think kudos for Benning to getting something from out of Olli Juolevi. I think he got, talking about that trade, I think you could argue he got more than expected, everything out of Olli Juolevi. Yeah, okay, it didn't work out. Okay, we passed that point. They moved on, and they got something for him. And I think that and I think they got maybe more than expected. I would have been in a 4th or 5th round pick kind of thing for Olli Juolevi. The fact that they got a couple players I think can help, I think Benning deserves some applause there.
And not just that, but also another kind of failed 1st-round pick as well to boot. So, yeah, the fact that we were able to get 2 bodies and one of those being a project 1st-rounder, yeah, I'll give props to Jim for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, the getting a local kid too, who's a right shot. I think it's good. When you lost Brady Keeper, unfortunately, they lost some of that right side depth that I thought they did a good job filling in. But I think it's for what it is, for where Olli Juolevi was, I'm not upset with that return. Maybe it's just because I've moved on from where he was drafted and everything. And I don't know. I think Brady Tkachuk got over $8 million there, Dev. The B stands for better.
Troll. Get out of here.
I don't know. I feel like we're the only podcast that in Canucks podcast that is willing to give Jim Benning any positive props. Like, I think everyone else is like, no, we're not doing it. It's not cool. When we're the only ones. We're nerds.
Yeah, just quick tangent. I mean, I don't know, if all you listened to Francesco Aquilini on with Sportsnet 650 the other day, but that became very evident as to why Jim Benning's still the general manager by listening to that interview. It's you don't get to hear from Francesco very often in the media, so it's worth listening to.
I will admit I haven't, but I definitely will once we're done this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry, I missed. I have to admit I did miss that. I was going to listen to it, and I ended up missing it to get some other things done. But
it is what it is. You can look at where Juolevi was drafted. Yes, it was a complete and utter miss, but that is years ago, and it's time to move on. And the fact, instead of just continuing to hold on and grasp that he's going to turn into something, when it's pretty evident that he's at very best, he's going to be a 6-7 D man in this league. You try and get something that can help you depth wise and add to a team weakness that the penalty kill looked like it was going to be and is still a concern right now. It was a decent trade.
And I think they kind of learned their lesson from the whole Virtanen, debacle. They kind of held on to that promise of what he could be a little too long, and it kind of burned the Canucks in the long term. So I think, lesson learned from that, and kind of did their best to make the most of getting the value out of Olli when they could.
Yeah, I mean, this is another case where they're dealing from a position of weakness, but actually got a decent return out of it. So I know we're kind of like trying to celebrate like little things here. And get around the real issue of the draft pick was a miss. But that's how it goes sometimes. As Jim Benning said, Juolevi was picked at the time due to organizational need. And at the time, Juolevi was highly regarded throughout the scouting community. So, it's easy to look back on it now and say, oh, well, that was dumb. I mean, yeah, it's turned out that way, but it wasn't at the time.
Well, Craig Button said something interesting, and I will grant you that Craig Button is smarter than me. but Craig Button was on Donnie and Dolly, and he said something that I don't know if I fully agree with. He said that more times or not, the teams fail players more than players fail teams. And I feel a bit why I disagree with that is I feel that vision for Virtanen here, but this is clearly a guy that I think the Canucks were far more patient with him than should have been. He here to see what happened with Virtanen, and I feel a little bit, with Juolevi, I think that's somewhere in there as well. I think he has to take some responsibility in his development. We hear so many stories about players that were, were drafted so low and continuing to prove themselves. I mean, trying to prove players wrong. We don't get a lot of talk about the player that is drafted higher and not putting in the work that is necessary. I mean, and Daryl, I'll bring back what Daryl Sutter said about the young players in the Flames. I'm not necessarily saying this about the young players in the Canucks, but I do think that there's something to be said about Daryl Sutter talking about a sense of entitlement. It certainly can happen with players that are picked in the top bit. You look at a guy like Jesse Puljujarvi and the Oilers as an example of a guy that had to put in his work. He expected it to come easy. He had to leave. They brought him back, and I think it's safe to say that he has improved a lot for the Oilers because he put in the work. And I think, it's easy to criticize management. I also think that there's some criticism that needs to fall on the player as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Puljujarvi because a lot of times the players just kind of double down and say, no, it's somebody else's fault. And because they're used to going through their hockey development, always being the best and told they're the best and moving along to the next level with ease. And then when some guys get to the professional level and they hit that wall, they don't really know what to do. And in Puljujarvi's case, it kind of was looking like there was going to be a divorce with him and the Oilers. But instead, to his credit, he took it to heart, got to work. Addressed the problems in his game that needed fixing, and he's come back and he's been awesome for them. So, with Juolevi, you hope for his sake with a new team that he'll take that perspective on it as well. But a lot of times guys need to be traded and be told that they're expendable to really wake up a little bit.
But the Juolevi's situation is very complicated too because there was injuries involved there, and I don't think he was ever the same after those injuries physically. I don't think he had the skating and the pivoting ability to be able to keep up at the NHL level that you would need to be a top end player and to reach the level that you need to be considered a good pick at where he was. But it also, you looked at how he came into camp and he was absolutely dead after that bag skate. And then I don't think that's the best way to talk about, to evaluate a player, but he also knew what was coming, and he should have been able to put himself in a position to impress Travis Green, and he wasn't able to. So it's, I think it's just an unfortunate situation where injuries and maybe a little bit of entitlement at the beginning, because I think there was a bit of entitlement at that beginning before he went back to Finland to play, and then then the injuries happened, and you just throw that all together, and it just didn't work out. So it's it was time to move on. I wasn't surprised that the move happened, and getting a fourth line player who can penalty kill, which was a need for the Canucks. That's nice, and adding some depth on the right side, that's really good as well.
Yeah, ultimately, I think it kind of comes down to is a little bit of everything, all of the above, if you will. So, but I think Kevin does have a good point as far as bringing up the fact that there's some onus on the player, and that typically doesn't get talked about all that often. So, yeah, it's definitely a good to put a spotlight on that when it's warranted.
And, covering the play-by-play with the U15 AAA tournament last week, I mean, they're 15 and under, so I'll take that into part of what I'm about to say here. But it does relate a little bit to the NHL. There was a couple of guys I was like, my gosh, I am so looking forward to watching these guys for the rest of the tournament. And they struggled the rest of the tournament. They did not have a good tournament. So it happens, right? It's at a higher level, it's not always going to be easy, and consistency is something that is really hard to development, and that's why the good ones get there. Like the Flames and Sam Bennett, it's I think a lot of the same issue. This was a guy that was picked fourth. He had some expectations, and Brad Treliving said both failed. So they both admitted that. So I think that this is sort of the same here. Two more things I did want to make sure that we touched on. Zach McEwen, Tyler brought it up. He's off to the Flyers, claimed on waivers. I know that the anti-Bennings are like, this is poor asset management again, but you're not going to get much for Zach McEwen anyway. He probably fits the Flyers mentality, and I don't think there was any more room on him on this Canucks lineup. I think a number of people have passed him. I think Highmore passed him. I think Justin Dowling and what he can do on the power play passed him. I just don't think there was any more room for Zach McEwen, unfortunately, anymore. Shout out to Corey Hergott, the big guy.
Yeah, I was just thinking about Corey as well. It is too bad they couldn't get anything for him, but to all of Kevin's points, I mean, they're correct. I mean, Zach was okay, but it wasn't the greatest camp or preseason for him. And like I said about Yoel Levy with the coach, it didn't seem like he had the coach's trust anymore either, Zach McEwen. So, I mean, he had his chances, and last season, and when he got in, he was all right, but it wasn't knock your socks off type of play. And unfortunately, when you have a few more guys passing in the pecking order, that's kind of the end for you.
Yeah, I have to agree with Kevin's points. Overall, I would say it just kind of stings that we lost 2 over the waiver wire in the course of a week. I think Gadjevich kind of stings a little bit more as far as the promise that he kind of held moving forward, more so than McEwen. McEwen kind of already was a known asset as far as what he brings. But yeah, overall, I'm just more miffed that we got burnt twice on the waiver wire this week.
Yeah, that's a good point there, Chris. I think that's part of why a lot of people got upset. It's like you lose 2 big body wingers who could play fourth line and could pot a goal here or there, and actually maybe be a net front presence on the power play. Both of them could do that, but they honestly were passed on by multiple players on the depth chart. Höglander comes in and wins a spot last year. Pod Colson comes in, wins a spot this year. Matthew Highmore has been someone who has won a spot over those guys. Dowling, Patan, both won spots over those guys. And yeah, they're all very different players, but you have to find a way to find a spot and find a way to prove to the coaching staff and the management staff that you deserve to be on the team. And neither of them, I don't think, were quite there with this team. And that's what happens when you bring in depth players like that, is you're going to potentially push out players who you've been trying to develop and maybe haven't quite got to the level that you need them to be at. And it sucks, but they brought in Alex Chiasson to be the net front guy on the power play. And the Canucks still have Tyler Mott and Brock Boeser to slide into this roster as well. Mm-hmm. Let's not forget that. We're 3 games in. We haven't seen Brock Boeser play, and we haven't seen Tyler Mott play. And this lineup still looks good. That's what the depth is, and that's what happens when you do have depth. You're going to lose players on the waiver wire.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, Chiasson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chia, not shy.
Yeah. Poor guy. And did they didn't actually fix the uniform, did they, at any point?
Maybe it's now good luck.
You would have thought at some point that it would come to their attention that he's got the wrong spelling, and they would have corrected that between periods or something. But
maybe they don't have the ability on the road. Who knows?
Maybe it is the right spelling, and we had the wrong spelling all along. It's one of those situations where we were mispronouncing the name wrong the whole time. Maybe
we'll
it's one of
do
those.
A hockey podcast investigation to determine.
Yes, I will dig into that.
What the story was.
Yeah. I think kudos to the Abbotsford Canucks, and they got off to their start. And Danila Kalimovic, the second-round pick, scored his first AHL goal. And, he's still a project, second-round pick. But I think this is a good sign for the Canucks. Getting him a goal, this guy, no matter where you sit on the fence with him, the one thing you cannot disagree with, he has confidence. He plays with confidence, and that is a good thing. And that's something I'm noticing with the Canucks forwards that we're starting to see. Hoglander plays with a bit more of an edge and confidence. Garland, you talked about Horvat. Podkolzin a bit too. Klimovich, I think, adds to that. I think that's a good thing.
It's not. I think it's a little bit more than confidence. I think it's a little bit of swagger, a little bit of. I think that's what they need too, and that's you. But Kevin, you talked about playing with an edge and being pests and pissing players and fans off. When you play with swagger, you're going to do that.
That's why the 2011 team was so well hated, because they had it in spades.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying things on my muted. I mean, my profound thoughts are muted. But yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think so. Anything else we need to touch on with the Vancouver Canucks?
Maybe just quickly the road ahead there for them. They play Tuesday in Buffalo, Thursday in Chicago, and then they finish the road trip next Saturday, Hockey Night in Canada, for the Seattle Kraken home opener. That game also on ESPN, so it'll be quite the night there in Seattle. Canucks could be in tough for that one at the end of a road trip with a pretty charged up scene there in Seattle.
So let's try and get 2 wins before that game comes up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I think I'm very excited about that game. I think it will be great. Just as a side note, it really seems like the Kraken fans, Seattle is starting to gravitate towards this team, especially a bunch of media members. It is starting to get picked up. And I think that's exciting for them. We'll touch on them in a little bit as well. And I also want to give a shout out to John Garrett. I hope he gets better. And, and just, guys, Corey Hirsch has done so much for this community in terms of mental health. I just think he went in there. I think he's having fun calling the games. It may not be your cup of tea, but I thought ultimately he added a lot more insight than I think a lot of people gave him credit for. And I kudos to him. It's not easy to jump from radio to TV, and he did it on line. And I think kudos to him.
And I'll also throw some kudos Dan Riccio's way in the fact that because Hirsch had to get that last second promotion, someone else had to fill in for color on the radio. So the fact that he went from, just being a host to jumping in on some play-by-play, I'll give him some props as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit, I love John Garrett, but it's a bit refreshing to hear a different voice on the TV broadcast. And, Corey obviously is very enthusiastic, so let's not crap on that. But there is more going on in his ears with the TV production and the replays and stuff, so that can make the job a little bit more challenging. So if he seems a little all over the map, I know I wouldn't blame him for feeling that way. I just wonder if he's finally gotten all the Brendans out. He did call Shorty Brendan a few times. At least in the Philly game. So hopefully by now he's got that out of the system.
Yeah. I can't wait to become a good play-by-play announcer so people can tweet how awful, that have no idea how to play-by-play, can tweet how awful I am. So.
Yeah, well, people are angry people.
Everyone's a critic.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Devin's Leaf as he continues to troll us in the chat. They had some salary cap issues and had to bring in a backup goaltender. No, not David Ayers. I can't remember this guy's name, but it was not a regular guy, and it led to some interesting discussion around this. And I'm going to pull up the good old tweet here from Carlo Koivakova.
Oh, I was hoping you'd do this.
By the way, it was Alex Bishop. signed to an
Congratulations.
ATO from the University of Toronto.
There you go.
The NHL is the best hockey league in the world, which means teams should never have to have shortened layouts or rely on renting goalies because of cap issues. Time for the NHL to bend on hard cap and create a system more flexible so that the NHL players and fans aren't embarrassed.
The only thing embarrassing about this situation is Carlo taking that
leave
take.
it to you. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, the only thing embarrassing is Carlo's take on that. I mean, okay, Carlo, I know you're in Toronto and you're a former Leaf and you're on Toronto radio, but no, the simple answer here is manage your cap better. The owners are not going to bend on a hard cap. They burned a whole season to get a hard salary cap. They're not going back on that. Like that, I mean, it's just silliness to say that. Like, just manage better. Just manage your cap better.
I'm with you, Tyler. I think it's yeah. There's my only issue is, and Alan Walsh quote tweeted this and went off on a bit of it. And I do think that one thing that we are seeing now is there is a massive gap between the top players and then everyone else. The middle class of the NHL is getting absolutely just knocked down because it's all about signing your top players, and the more money they keep getting, the less money there is to for the rest of the players to have. And I just think I think I understand the idea behind more of a soft cap, and I think I agree with it. But I think there's also other ways you can implement things here. You could you're able to carry a third goalie that isn't necessarily on your cap that can go in situations like this instead of having to resort to a Zamboni driver or an ATO goalie from college hockey. I think I think there's other ways to handle this as well.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Sean's kind of middle of the road sort of take there. And also, Sean, did you not pick a table?
Every once in a while, I'll stand on the fence.
Chris, corners, Sean. Can you flag this one for later, Kev?
Yes, this is clippable. This is very clippable.
Well, considering how much heat I take for not taking a hard position, I figured I had to get my shot in at
Good
Sean.
for you, Chris. Good for you.
Yeah, this leads me, Tyler, you made a really good point here. And this leads sort of what I think Robin Lehner was trying to say about the NHLPA and sort of some of the stuff that's going on. I mean, I think, regardless of your stand on it, I feel like, or it feels like it's top heavy. That if you're a star in this league, you have, in the NHLPA, you've got more leeway than a player of shorter status. And I think that's where Robin Lehner, I think, was trying to go here. And I think, okay, I want you to hear me out because this is going to sound a little bit ridiculous. I understand Duncan Keith's point. Don't agree with him, but I understand what Duncan Keith was trying to say about the NHLPA, about the vaccines. I think what he was trying to say is the NHLPA isn't standing up for the players the way that I think they can. And we can have a whole argument about that, but I think that this is where this gets trapped within this salary cap thing. I mean, where I agree with Sean is I think there has to be an option of 3 goaltenders. The entertainment in me wants the Zamboni driver to come back in as a backup because that's fun. But I mean, yeah, I think ultimately you have to manage your cap. And there's been teams in this situation before. And, it is the best league in the world. And what I would say to Carlo Coriafi is I think if this as the best league in the world, the salary cap should be managed the best in the world. And it wasn't for the Leafs, and they got caught.
Yeah, and that's the thing that, it's so much of a head scratcher is that this is happening to the Leafs, the organization with the most wealth, the organization that should have endless resources to install people to manage the cap for you. Of all teams that shouldn't be having issues with being able to recall a goalie because of the salary cap, of all teams, it shouldn't be Toronto seemingly that's having this problem. So for someone in the media to make an excuse for it is just laughable to me. I mean, no.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't pass the giggle test.
Especially when you have Vince Gilman in your staff. He was the Canucks capologist when they had their run. He was doing the best he could to manage that then.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's being underutilized or what have you, but yeah, I have to agree with Tyler's take in the sense that, yeah, they made their bed and now they have to lay in it.
Yeah, I mean, they're not the Buffalo Sabres or the Arizona Coyotes or name some other team that's been in disarray in the last couple of years. They're the Toronto freaking Maple Leafs. They should be able to have this figured out. They should be able to afford the smartest people to manage these things, and for them to not be able to do it is just, yeah, I don't know, to just go out and look for sympathy. If that's the modus operandi there, good luck to you guys, I guess.
Like, I don't know if it's just because of my Western Canadian perspective on this, but it seems like Cole McAvoy is making an excuse for essentially the New York Yankees of hockey should be able to buy their way out of any problem and circumvent the hard cap. And I just don't agree with that.
No.
And there's also a timeline here that needs to be understood. When did they know Mrazek couldn't go? Did they have enough time to bring up someone?
Yeah, those are all important questions. Kevin mentioned earlier about the fun of having the Zamboni driver be a backup. Well, what makes those stories over the years compelling is because there's no time to get another guy in there, so you are scrambling to find somebody local that's an amateur. That wasn't so much the case this time. You'd think they could have gotten somebody in there had they had the salary cap space.
Yeah. I mean, and the wonder kid Kyle Dubas there, and you have also, you're the number one franchise, the number one valued franchise. I mean, sorry, I think, yeah, I'm with you, Tyler. I think that this is, I haven't seen the tweets, but I'm sure Carlo has gotten a number of excellent tweets in response and positive support of his wonderful take, because that's how Twitter operates. So,
good job, Rick Dollywall.
Yeah,
thank you. Phil Disappear. Hey, I've been saying names for a long time here, so give me a little bit of credit if I get a little tongue-tied here.
Yeah.
And I guess the other one, is John Tavares complaining about the officiating in the Toronto-Ottawa game. I have to admit, I still missed the call, but I know Devin wasn't super happy with the officiating. He said both ways. I think he meant towards Leafs, let's be honest here. But already complaints about officiating. But to be honest, what I've seen of the Leafs, I think they've looked a little bit uninspired to me. Like they're waiting. This is a team that I think is waiting for a playoff or something important to happen here. I know Montreal's 0-3, but they didn't get off to a good start there. Early in the season kind of nap for the Leafs, it looks like to me.
Well, and the concern there is that if they continue to, come out the gate sluggish here, and I it's still very early and there's a long way to go. But let's say they get to the end of October and they've got a losing record. Are they going to start to get a little tight? Like there's a lot of big expectations on the organization externally. I mean, do the players feel that if they do, like that could get pretty dicey there if they start, failing a little bit. Feeling that weight a little bit and squeezing the stick a little.
They're 2-1 after 3 games.
Yeah,
like they haven't had Austin Matthews yet. They need to make the playoffs and they need to win in the playoffs for this to be considered a successful season. So in all reality, it's just get in and find a way to win in the playoffs, and whatever happened at the beginning here will be completely lost.
Yeah, I'm with you on there. Yeah, I think a couple rounds, all is forgiven in Toronto. So
and then with the reffing, water is wet. Hockey players, hockey fans will complain about reffing. Trust me, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Not even just hockey, regardless of sport.
Yeah. I mean, like I was telling some of the guys last night, I mean, save the arguments for the more meaningful stuff. I mean, and it's still fairly early to be fretting over the reffing. But when you're into the playoff stretch and a bad call costs you a game that could cost you a playoff spot, then I understand that. But we're not at that stage yet here.
Although the counterpoint I would have to against Tyler on that one is the fact that they tend to call the most penalties in the very start of the season.
Yes.
And like the example of this season would be with the cross-checking. So, yeah, that's the kind of the counterpoint that I think needs to be brought up as far as
you know why this is, right? I mean, it's always a bit of a slippery slope with the officiating standard. So if you started at let them play, where does it end up in a few weeks? It ends up being a shit show, right? So you want to start it tight, end up somewhere mid-season at an acceptable level where there's not too many calls, but still you get your power plays and your offense and your excitement and all that entertainment value, air quotes, still part of the game, right?
Yeah.
No, Tyler, do you want to have one standard from game 1 to game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals? Come on, get it right.
You do want that, but game's not played that way at any level. At any level, it does start to slide a bit.
I'm just curious, just kind of going on a little bit of a tangent here in terms of that. The officiating in the Oilers, both Oilers, like I'm not complaining about it, but there was all this talk that McDavid wasn't getting penalties for his fouls enough. Did you see anything noticeably different in those two games than we've seen before?
No.
It was the same. That's what I felt too. I didn't feel like they were.
It's the typical
that nothing changed there, but just was particularly curious because that was such a big talking point for a number of people last year. But
it's always going to be a talking point when Connor McDavid doesn't get a penalty.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah, my God, you touch him. Looking at him should be a penalty, I guess. Apparently. Yeah.
And if we're talking about clippable stuff while still in the show, Sean's eye roll there was.
No, I mean, I'm not. I was just curious what you guys saw more than I'm like, it should be. I'm just curious about that.
No, I think we kind of have a similar take there, Kev.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a whole bunch of other stuff that moved on. Where do we want to start?
Do you want my take on the Kraken win?
Yeah, let's start there. Let's start with the Kraken, who did get their first win. They did not get a shot until their empty net goal by the ghost-faced himself, Brandon Tanev. That's my Brandon Tanev impression. And beat the Nashville Predators. So I'll leave this to you first, Sean. I have a take as well.
I don't care. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
Well, even the Cats agree with you, apparently.
I was wondering what was going on there. That wasn't a take I was expecting to hear, but Kevin, let's hear yours.
As I said, I think that they are in Seattle, just listening to a bit of it, following it on their radio and stuff. They are starting to kind of enjoy it. So I think from that sense, it's really good. And I think that is good for Vancouver because I do think that this will develop that rivalry that has been long waiting to happen. It's not going to be just Canucks dominant. They remind me, they play like the New York Islanders in a lot of ways. It's defensive. They're relying a lot on Grubauer. Offense is going to be really hard to come by. but they're going to be hard to play against, and probably not super entertaining if you're looking for a free-flowing game. But they are hardworking, and I suspect that they will probably be in the mix. In terms of offense, I'm not seeing a lot of it right now, but they're hardworking, and I think that I think that this is going to work in Seattle. I really do. I think that they've done a lot of good things to educate the fans. I think their social media game is really strong, and I think things are on the up. They're off to a good start in Seattle for sure. And congratulations. I think the obvious pick is you go with Gio as your captain. I think that was an obvious pick. Good job there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how obvious it was, although they are taking a guy that has experience and is a veteran in the league. So well regarded for what he does off the ice. So there was a safe choice there. But I mean, the Vegas, they went, more than a season without a captain and still reached the Stanley Cup final in their first year. So it's not like they had to make a pick, but it's not a bad choice there either. But just to Sean's point, for Seattle, good for them. But look, from a Canucks fan perspective, just enough wins to keep the fans there interested in Seattle, but not enough to make the playoffs, please. Thanks.
Here, here.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll look forward to next Saturday.
Yes, finally, the crosstown. Yes. Yes, I'm looking forward to finding out who Canuck fans will hate on the Kraken. So Brady is back. B for better, according to Sean. You guys suspected last week that this would take a little bit longer. Hang on, I should screenshot. I'll have to screenshot that a little bit later. But Brady did sign an 8-year contract, not a bridge deal. So whatever Brady and management discussed, Brady believed in. And they got a guy that they will keep for a long time. And I mean, you could argue points, but he's going to be a value for that team for sure. I mean, and I think they have him there, and good on Ottawa for getting this done long term. I mean, we criticize Ottawa for a lot of things, but ownership got this one right.
Yeah, they did, and I think another case of the player gets to the start of the regular season, and now you're missing out on regular season games and pay, and it's time to make a deal. Now, getting Tkachuk into the lineup as quickly as possible is the key. They're playing this afternoon against Dallas. We'll see how they fare against the Stars without him, but they need him in that lineup here ASAP if the Senators are serious at contending this year. For a playoff spot, that is.
Yes.
And it's such a tough division, but
yeah.
I think you made a good point there, Tyler, in terms of it. The player starting to feel the pressure to get back because he's seeing regular season games happening. But I also think it was also the team going, well, regular season games are happening. We still don't have our star player signed. Fine. We'll give him over $8 million on a long-term deal because we need him. I think that pressure point hit both sides.
Yeah.
Plus Pierre Dorian went on cap friendly, saw that he was still below the cap floor, and decided that he finally needed to sign Brady to make the cap floor.
Yes, I'm sure that's exactly how that played out.
Did you see the picture? I can't remember who it was. They were signing Parker Kelly to a deal, and that you could see in the background that he had cap friendly on his computer.
Okay, I was not aware of that part. Okay.
Kevin?
Sorry, it was on mute there. I did see it. I thought that was hilarious. That's great. Hey, we probably think more GMs use that more than admit others. So, okay,
I can't remember who put it on Twitter, but I saw somebody put it on Twitter about, imagine if somebody hacked cap friendly and just messed around with all the numbers, what kind of chaos that would cause for the not only the media, but actual teams, because it's like the Bible of cap, payroll structuring in the NHL. It's the backbone of it. Imagine imagine that site crashed.
Yeah, because we always think about it as far as like a media and fan perspective, but yeah, I guess this kind of pulls back the curtain on the fact that the NHL teams use it as an essential resource as well.
Yep, for sure. Charlie McAvoy got over $9 million. There were reports he was going to get 10. Ryan Pulock got his deal as well, yes, this week. Defensemen continue to get paid in this league. And
Defensemen's championships, yeah. I mean, not every organization feels that way, Edmonton, but good, solid, reliable D-men are hard to come by.
I like the McAvoy deal. He's the right age for an 8-year deal, in my opinion. Like, he's under 25. The 8-year deal for Pulock. I like Pulock as a player. He's just a bit older. I really think teams are not going to be happy with the end of these deals when they're signing 8-year deals for players in the 27 and up range. But then again, that GM's probably not going to be there.
Yeah, probably. That's true.
All right, Kev, get off mute.
Sorry, I'm just going to try and make, and I know that we're kind of, there's a lot going on here. I'm trying to get through some of this stuff quickly here. Let's go through the Habs here. 0-3. Any concern, or are we just shrugging our shoulders on this? Or
I would shrug the shoulders. I mean, I think a lot of people weren't expecting much from the Habs this season. So are we really surprised they're out the gate 0-3? I'm not. The question is now is, we saw Mark Bergevin last year be super aggressive as a general manager to make moves and keep pushing the team towards a playoff spot. They got in and then they got on this wonderful roll. But that was last year. That was a different year. Wonder now if he takes a more patient approach if they continue to struggle here in this first month of the season.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, they also kind of overachieved last season. So I feel like this is kind of that natural fall back to earth moment for them. So yeah, I'm not exactly shocked or surprised that they're struggling out the gate, but at the same time, you may want a little bit of a different result just to show a little bit of optimism. But yeah, I wouldn't say anything is overly shocking.
I think they deserved a better. They were able to play better than the first two games last night versus the Rangers. So yeah, it's still too early to really be too concerned if you're a Habs fan.
Yeah, I'm kind of up there. Yeah, it's not great to be off 0-3. Probably not the best market to be off 0-3, but if I was the Habs, I would just say just calm the horses here. There's a lot going on. You're dealing with the loss of Weber, the loss of Price. I think you're getting some players back, and this is a long season. A lot can happen. Yeah. So we'll get to the junior stuff here in a second, but ESPN, TNT made their debuts. The ESPN returning, TNT making their hockey debut. I'll start with my take. I really thought the broadcasts for ESPN, the play-by-play, I thought was really solid. Sean McDonough, I thought, did fine. Ray Ferraro, I thought that was I still think they need to work some stuff out, but I thought Kovalov some pretty good chemistry. Thought AJ Malesko and the gang, Brendan Burke did a nice job in the Kraken Vegas game. Leah Hextall called a game on Friday with Brian Boucher. If I had a criticism, I just felt their studio panel is bland. I think it's just good at having Emily Kaplan, though, but I think their studio is bland. TNT, for me, bringing in Charles Barkley on day one, I thought that was just a stroke of genius, and he had a lot of fun letting Gretzky score on him. Well, no, let's be honest. They didn't let Gretzky score on him. Gretzky scored on him, but he just added a great element. I thought a lot of fun. I think we'll probably see Barkley again, and I think a lot of people were concerned about Wayne Gretzky on this panel, and I think he's handled himself quite well. And I think the one edge I will give TNT is the panel part, and ESPN in terms of the look, I think has been there. We'll catch up on that, and I think everyone overall, I was pretty impressed with both of them.
For me, I feel like Sean McDonough. He's a great voice. I remember him quite fondly from the Blue Jays World Series wins back in the early '90s, calling those for CBS. Still going in the business. Did Monday Night Football. High credibility announcer. Did sound quite rusty at doing hockey though on that first night, but he'll shake that off. I thought John Mchugh was pretty good on the late game there. Boucher and Mleczko.
It was Buda. It was Brett. Yeah, it was
Mchugh. Yeah. Brendan Burke called the opener for TNT or one of those games on the opening night for TNT. But Boucher and Mleczko. I mean, they worked together at NBC, so that the chemistry was there, and that carried over nicely. Contrast there, they had AJ between the benches, performing the more traditional ice level analyst role, whereas Emily Kaplan was more of a between the benches reporter role there. I'm not sure how I like the fit there, although she does a great job with the player interviews. Like after the game, talking with Brian Boyle, I thought that was quite touching about how he's made his comeback to the NHL. Haven't seen much of the panels. Obviously, with Turner, that's an area where you would hope that there'd be strength based on their success with their NBA panel, and they've actually assembled, I think, a pretty decent Major League Baseball panel as well for their postseason coverage. And then, speaking of which, Turner's broadcasting the NL playoffs this year. And it's kind of cool to be watching the Dodgers and Giants, and here's promotion for their NHL coverage. So now you're getting that cross promotion, not just with one network, NBC, but you're getting it from two networks, and so that's never going to be a bad thing for the NHL to attract some new viewers. Overall, I think they're off to a pretty solid start there with both the networks. But to me, it seems like TNT's taken the more simpler approach and is more like what NBC used to be than with ESPN, where they've gone with some more in-house people that we haven't heard calling hockey in quite a while, and they're trying a few more things there. Like they had that, I don't know, they called it the rush, where it's basically one shift where there's no commentary, and it's just a bunch of low camera angles kind of coming at you fast and furious. It was interesting, but I'm not sure how long that innovation lasts. But it's like what we saw with Sportsnet when they took over the national package in 2014. There was a lot of experimenting that first year, and not a lot of it that remained after that.
Admittedly, I haven't seen much of the new ESPN and Turner stuff, but I will say what I have seen has been decently well. The only thing that I actually saw the clip of would have been Gretzky shooting on Barkley there. So that was definitely amusing, and I'm looking forward to see what ESPN might potentially innovate with, because I know that they're trying to take a fresh look at this, kind of like how Tyler touched on, like when Rogers got the Canadian package. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see where ESPN tries to take this and what stuff they try to experiment with. Obviously, there's going to be some hits and some misses, but I guess the fun of it is that experience, figuring it out along the way.
Yeah, and for the critics out there that might not like some of this new stuff, I said it when Rogers made their deal for the Canadian rights. These networks don't pay the big bucks to win the rights and keep everything the same. There's always going to be some amount of experimenting and change, and then eventually they kind of settle into that nice little area in which there's some change, but not alienating the traditional fan either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the different camera angles that ESPN's been using. I see potential with them. I just don't. I think they're using them too much at this point. I think it's finding that right medium for using them. And then unfortunately, I haven't been able to watch too much of the panels. I've been stuck being seasick watching the Rogers to the point panel.
Yeah.
Which looks like Rogers is they're experimenting now as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've made a big deal out of their new set that's in the Rogers campus now. They're out of the CBC building. And my only comment, I mean, I like the design of the sets and the fresh look visually. They got a new graphics package, a new audio that's gone with it. The studio just seems dark. I don't know if they've got the lighting correct in there. I don't know if I'm the only one that thinks that, but it just feels like it's quite dark in there.
Yeah, so I just happened to look up and watch the To The Point like first intermission of the early games last night, and I was really just jarring to see them have like such a small table with 4 people around it, and then like the camera is just constantly moving, and it's not like it doesn't feel like it's a natural movement. It just. I see what they're trying to do. I think the execution is off, and you're going to make people sick with that much camera movement.
And we actually kind of had a decent discussion about this at the pub last night for my little birthday get together. I actually took the opposite of Sean's opinion in this regard. I actually was kind of a fan of it. I admit that, like, you know, they might need to fine tune a little bit and maybe slow the camera movement a little bit. But I overall like the kind of panning over the shoulder sort of angle that they're kind of experimenting with. So, yeah, it could use some work, but ultimately I like what they're trying to go with there in that intermission.
Well, here's where I'm confused, because you go at the end there with the sort of the old Strombo set, and you had everybody sitting on a couch. Why is that not on the first intermission? To me, that feels a bit more comfortable to me. I would have to go with Sean there. I think that's too moving the camera around. Well intentioned, I think, is not how we have a conversation, right? We're looking eye to eye, and you want to have someone in a comfortable position. So I'm kind of with Sean. If it was me, and they don't pay me enough I'm not in their pay grade. But I would stick, if you're going to do that hot stove, let's go with the Strombo Lounge. I think that's a little bit more comfortable. That's just me, in my view there. But the set looks good. I think Carolyn Cameron is done on Wednesday. I think they've made some nice moves.
She's going to be busy now. She's with hosting all the regional coverage and the Wednesday night coverage. She's a busy lady. One thing I found with the Wednesday panel, at least, was you've got Bieksa, and on the far right, you've got Bieksa, you've got Elliot Friedman there in the middle. You had Cassie Campbell in between, and you got Friedman and Bieksa kind of exchanging barbs with each other. They're having some fun, but that seemed a little awkward. Put them side by side if you want to have that chemistry going. Put the ladies on the end, put the 2 guys in the middle there so they get their jabs in. We got used to the 4 boxes there the last couple of years, and it was very easy for Kevin to take shots at Elliott. It seemed a little bit awkward there on Wednesday, though, I would think, just the way they had that all laid out. But they'll get that smoothed out over time.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I even just for the graphics, even for Sportsnet, I like the graphics. They look a little bit more sharp, a little more bright. Really like the new look that Sportsnet has brought overall. So,
they went 7 years with that. They went 7 years with that original package there. They imagine maybe they had plans to update the graphics a little earlier, and then along came the pandemic. But yeah, 7 years is a pretty long time without a refresh. So it's nice to see that now.
Yeah. They're busy, making everybody busy. Merrick's working 6 days a week. Friedman's working 6.5 days a week, and Carolyn Cameron's working 6 days a week. So. Yeah. One junior thing I did want to touch on before we go. I'm not sure if this got any play in Calgary, but Luke Prokop, the first openly gay player in hockey, was traded from the Hitmen to the Oil Kings for a big chunk of stuff. A couple of players, 2 future draft picks. Not sure entirely fully what is going on from the Hitmen's perspective, but this sounds like a guy I think the Oil Kings are in this to win this. I imagine they're probably one of the top 4 in the East that have a shot at winning the championship. You bring in a guy like Luke Prokop in your dressing room, big kid. I think this sounds like a Hitman are playing for the future. Prokop, they want to get Prokop a championship. That's how I'm reading it. I don't know if there's anything else to read into this.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is with WHL being an age-out league where you can. You have to capitalize on selling on moving on from players and getting assets back when you can, and start building the next group. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to follow the Hitmen too much over the past couple of years, but they've been kind of a middling team. So maybe it's time to really focus in on trying to get some good players that can come up and they can be a good team in a year or two.
Yeah, admittedly, I haven't been paying much attention to the dub lately, so I don't really have too much to add, but I would ultimately agree with, it definitely seems like the Oil Kings are definitely pushing to win now, and that's obviously going to help them with that push.
Yeah, I did like Luke. Luke is a good kid, and I wonder if he gets some World Junior consideration. He's certainly a guy with the size and seemingly the mobility to play on that World Junior ice. I know he wasn't invited to camp, but I wonder if we see him. And I'm just talking based on ability. Seems like a guy that has the size and what they're looking for. I'm just putting it out there. Just give me a second here. Yeah. In terms of everything else that's kind of going on in the dub, the Blazers lost their first game to the Rockets. You got a feel for the Rockets. One of the two teams that I cover, that group was set for a Memorial Cup championship appearance. When the pandemic happened, they played the first game in over 600 days. They did beat their rivals, the Blazers, with newly acquired Colton Dock. But I've got a feel for the Rockets and think that they're going to be. I'm interested to see what happens this year. But the Blazers lost their first game. They did shut out the Giants in Langley. But that's that out there for the WHL. I feel like Tyler was going to say something.
No, I'm all good. Just listening to your report.
Go to dubnetwork.ca. We cover all of that there. But I'd like to bring in a little WHL every once in a while.
You bet.
Hockey, folks. Anything else we need to talk about? Anything I missed?
The only thing I would potentially bring up is that there's been a little bit of movement with the Eichel situation. It seems like there's more of a willingness for teams that are still interested in picking him up that they're getting access to his medical files. It seems like most of the suitors are willing to allow him to get the surgery that he wants. So, obviously nothing concrete yet, but there's some movement, which is progress.
Yeah, and as we move further into the season and teams get more, I don't want to say desperate, but there's more urgency for teams to make a move. I think you'll probably see it happen at some point.
Yeah, I expect maybe in November when you see maybe one of those teams who thought they'd be battling for a playoff spot realize that they may not be. May try and move on and look at next season, because by the time your Eichel gets that surgery, comes back, you're looking at next season for top to be able to have Eichel at as good as he can be.
Mm-hmm.
For the record, it sounds like from Elliot Friedman's perspective, he's put some money on Vegas getting Eichel, which is I don't know how you pull that off, but from their cap situation, but they seem to have. They find ways to do these kind of things.
Yeah,
I don't know how they do really
it. Well, they're just very bold. They're not afraid to take a chance on something like that.
Yeah, it'd be very curious to see who would get sent back to make that cap work.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see how they manage to pull it off if they are the team that does it.
I have to think, and maybe it's just me, but I have to think that this ultimately has to become a three-way deal. I think someone else needs to somewhat broker some of this for it to work. If especially if you're, because Buffalo's really looking for futures, but you are going to have to give up a significant piece from your roster to get him. That's why I have to wonder if this ends up becoming a three-way deal.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at this point because, like, I look at even if you give up futures, they still need to move cap. And I think what the other big thing is that Buffalo said they don't want to retain on Eichel. So who are they giving up? Is it a Riley Smith? Is it a Evgeny Dadonov, or both and more? Because you look at where Vegas is at cap space wise, they're in LTIR. They've got just over 2.7 or just under 2. They're just under $3 million in LTIR space. So they still need to find a lot of room to bring in a $10 million cap hit that Jack Eichel has. And even then, like, he's going to be on LTIR anyways until he gets healthy. You're going to have to get, like, you're not, yeah, I'll be there. This is where you need the Lawrence Gilmans. You need your capologist to come in and figure this shit out, because it's not going to, I can't even look at it and go, how does this work? Because of the LTIR implications.
Well, the other complication with this, too, is one of the players you're going to move is going to either have a modified or B, a no movement clause, and they're sure the hell not going to move it for Buffalo. So that's the other challenge with this deal that comes up. So if the Flames are in it and Sean Monahan is in it, he's got a no movement. You even think for a remote second he's going, Buffalo, I'm on my way. I don't see that. That's the other difficulty with this trade.
Agreed. Riley Smith doesn't have any sort of clause on his deal right now. So if anyone on Vegas gets moved, that could potentially be it. But they also have just lost Max Pacioretty for what I've heard is up to 6 weeks, and that's huge. Like, that's a massive loss for them.
Yeah, for sure. And then Mark Stone is out for a bit too. The one other thing I forgot about this. I'm going to just toss it out there. Who has the best defense, 6 or 7 or 8D in the Pacific Division? And the reason I'm bringing this up is just from a Canucks perspective. We were all talking about how bad this defense is and how concerned it is. When I look around this division, I'm not seeing a lot of strong D. Maybe the Kraken, I think, might be on the top of the list. But it's not like, this isn't like the smorgasbord of D in hockey.
You definitely are correct there. Like, this division is not super strong as far as having a solid, like, 6D that, are the envy of the rest of the league. Like, Calgary was there at one point. You could probably make an argument that Vegas in their first couple of years was up there. Obviously, Seattle being more defensive minded, they're probably going to be up there as far as this season's concerned. But yeah, there really is no, I guess, top tier D core in the Pacific.
Vancouver, Vegas, and Edmonton have the top end, but their depth are questions. Seattle has the depth. I'm not sure the top end in terms of I'm not sure they've got the top end that those 3 teams have. Everyone else seems to be in the middle. I think I would say, I would take Seattle. Like, if you want just a steady defense that's not going to not going to make too many blatant mistakes, I think Seattle's probably your best bet. But like I said, Vancouver has Quinn Hughes and OEL. Edmonton has Darnell Nurse, and I think you can make an argument that Tyson Barrie can be a game changer on that blue line with his offensive abilities. And then Vegas has Alex Pietrangelo and Shea Theodore. So I would take all 3 of those. Like, those three teams have the top end talent. So but they're also prone to mistakes because they're a little more aggressive with how they approach the game.
I would say by default, I would take the Vegas defense as the best one there, but just because of Pietrangelo and Theodore in particular. But yeah, as has been kicked around here, Pacific Division. It's maybe a little more offensive than we'd like to think.
Yeah, for sure.
Just going back to that Eichel talk with Vegas. Alex Tuch's on the LTIR right now as well. Like, and they still only have like $2.75 million in cap in LTIR space, and he makes 4.75. So they have some work to do as well, just to even potentially bring Alex Tuch back to off LTIR, let alone make a huge move where you have to move out salary to make it work.
Yeah, but we never thought they would get Alex Pietrangelo, and they somehow found a way to do it. So that
was also in the off season, which I think is easier to make those bold, wide sweeping changes.
Fair enough. And you also have to keep in consideration, obviously they had to make Pietrangelo move possible. They had to drop a guy like Nate Schmidt, and the Canucks were able to get him for only a third-round pick. So it makes you wonder who would be that player of significant cap hit that they would be likely to part with to make room for him.
Certainly going to be interesting, but we will leave it there. Reminder again, starting next week, Monday nights, we will be gathering for our podcast as I continue on my play-by-play. Thank you, everyone, for your patience as I gravitate and navigate through that. But how do we follow everyone?
I am Brady Tkachuk 03 on Twitter, and I also would like to remind people about starting next week as well. We'll be starting our Pig and Puck Club contest, so stay tuned for your word of the week and retweet our podcast episodes for an entry as well.
I'm on Twitter at TNoble, TNOBLE.
And I am at Schneids on most social media. And definitely get those retweets. And starting next week, make sure to DM us that word of the week.
Yes. Thanks for the reminder. I was about to say something, but I feel like Sean is driving the bus on that, so I will give him the word on that. Debit is GordHowe09. I am KEVOLE. Podcast_hockey. Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast. YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast. Give the Pig a Duke a follow as well. And if you're in Calgary, enter that contest. And we will be back next week. We also have a couple of other ideas on the percolated, so keep an eye out for us. We're being innovative. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.